The situation for crypto just keeps getting crazier. Just when you thought the market couldn't get any crazier, it decides to do it yet again. And just now, again today, we've got some announcements over from China. But that's not the only country that we've got some announcements from, but that's just one of them that again just make everything so much potentially worse. Well, just take a look at this. Just for 1 second first, enjoy the view. Nice little sea here, nice little resort. Back to the topic at hand, which was what I just described. China to ban the import of US films. Now this is not that big a deal, right? But it's one of the many things that are going on. Another one being this right here. China says it will not bow to Trump's tariff threats, threatening countermeasures and saying they will fight to the frickin' end. Now, this is a rather interesting situation. For example, all these about what China is banning, like the US films, etc., they all got committee notes because people are disputing them. Same for when they said they're not going to export some minerals anymore or some metals anymore. There's a lot of back and forth on it. But what we do know is that the Chinese yuan and actually many currencies in that state or I should say, are in this sort of state. The Chinese yuan just hit the 19-month low against the US dollar, the lowest level in a few years right here. And let's quickly go back, if I can, to my bookmarks. Here we go. Let me just quickly refresh it. For example, right now, we've had record volume, zero liquidity, exhausted Goldman trader warn any positive headlines are met with explosive reactions. And again, that's because right now everything is up and down like crazy. But in reality, the market's a bit thinner than it usually is. Because I think a lot of people are not so sure where things are going to go. But then again, the people that are speculating, they're not keeping their money in. They're just speculating on the short term. Now, also the Vietnamese dong weakens to all-time low against the dollar. There's no Russian collapse, neither military, industrial, nor economic, nor social. Another feedback, I guess, on the whole matter. Indonesia stocks gauge falls 9.2%, triggering trading halt. Then Trump's team considers exporter tax credit to offset tariff risks. A little fun side note, if you guys realize this, hey, there we go. Bitcoin was $22,000. When was that? 2 years ago or so? Yeah, 2 years ago, Bitcoin was $22,000. Ethereum was 1,500 schmeckles. And now it's kind of funny how 803 days later, Ethereum is basically at the same price, but Bitcoin is trading at a 4x of it. And it's kind of funny how a lot of altcoins like Cardano, XRP, Solana really are also still trading at a multiple X of what it was back then, all except for ETH. What a bad coin, huh? Anyway, BlackRock CEO Fink sees the chance of a potential interest rate rise. Just what is going on? The lesson investors learned today. At 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S. stocks swung $7 trillion in 30 minutes on a fake tariff deadline. While the move was undone, we obtained key information about the current state of the market, and here's what you need to know. Because again, it was such a massive spike in the S&P. We have never seen such a massive move ever before. $7 trillion on fake news is just crazy, but here's some background. So around 10:15 a.m., it was reported that Trump was considering a 90-day pause on the tariffs. That's how he went up a lot, but then quickly afterwards, it erased it based on the fact that it was quote-unquote fake. Minutes later, Trump announced perhaps the biggest news of the day. He's imposing another 50% tariff on China if they do not cancel their 34% tariff by April 8th. Again, that is now. This means that the U.S. is now set to impose a total tariff of a 104% on Chinese imports, 20 plus 34 plus 50. And again, this was a lot of the move before with regards to the fake news. Then here you can see China, another massive increase potential. Sum this all up, we have the confirmation of no tariff delay and also higher tariffs in China. Logically, this means the fundamental situation has deteriorated. However, the S&P closed the day 200 plus points above its low. So why did this happen if the trade war got worse? You know, we have China with repercussions. We have them setting higher tariffs over at China. When everything supposedly got just way worse, why did things get better? Well, today, the investors displayed how eager capital is to rotate back into the market. The market's decline has been largely self-inflicted and driven by one thing. Great thing, big thing, Trump's comments. Heading into fake news headlines, the technical picture was at March 2020 oversold levels. We identified this for our premium members. Let's see. The reality is that stocks have seen unprecedented outflows this year. Small caps are currently seeing minus $60 billion of net outflows, and this puts us on track to crush previous records by at least 2 times. Again, all of this capital is rushing to the sidelines due to Trump's comments, right? Look at that crazy decline here on the short term. Furthermore, it's important to remember where we were just weeks ago. 3 months ago, the top 10 stocks reflected a record 36% of the S&P. FOMO investing was everywhere as the AI run proliferated, there we go, the concentration of US equity markets. And here's why it's relevant now. From the October 2022 lows through the February 2025 highs, pullbacks of 5% were considered huge. In the wake of any weakness, investors bought the dip. The mindset remains, but is now hinged solely on Trump's comments. Today, Proved Capital is still eager to buy that dip. In a way, investors had been conditioned to buy the dip in stocks over the last 2 years because, well, really, when you start thinking about it, and even though I'm not a financial advisor, this is still quite true. If you just consistently buy the dip over prolonged periods of time, this goes for crypto, S&P, whatever, you're fine. Usually you make money. At least you have since inception of both, right? The S&P and the cryptocurrencies. So if the last 2 years have been like an extreme version of that, yeah, every single time a dip came, even for XRP at $2, for example, time and time again, it just keeps working. Now, at some point it might not, but that's always like a short-term thing, right? At least that's the way I see it. On a short term, sometimes it might not work, but on a longer term, it usually just keeps on working. And in this case here, let's say XRP at $2. You had 7 chances to buy $2 and win, and on the 8th time, it fell through. The thing is, though, if your habit was to buy the dip and it kept working and you keep continuing on, at this time, depending on how your risk management was, if you kept increasing the size every single time, you might have gotten screwed. But if you stayed consistent, well, then, yeah, I mean, it just kept working, and people still think it should be working now. Now, I will say, in my opinion, it still will, but it's a bit shorter. Oh, sorry. It will take a bit longer, perhaps, than last times. Recently, every single time it dipped, it just bounced back hard really quickly afterwards. And I guess even right now, it kind of did, because XRP crashed to 160. Right now, it's back to like 185 or 88 or something like that. Anyway, this goes for both institutional and retail investors. Even in March, capital piled into stocks as the market fell. Now, no one wants to miss the bottom if a trade deal is announced. And so everybody's just trying to bid on every single part of this switching around. Ultimately, this all comes down to the key driver of price, what we've talked about all year. Sentiment is the answer to most questions in this market. If April 9th nears without a US-China trade deal, sentiment will likely collapse again. Today, though, the market found some hope. Sentiment is polarized and fear is at March 2020 levels, which means more volatility is most likely ahead. Lately, the move in bonds was very telling today. While volatility ramped up, the 10-year note yield traded 30-plus basis points off of its lows. The macro backdrop is becoming even more complicated, and this, to me, is very, very interesting. Now, a few hours ago, we also saw that Japan's stock market surged over plus 6% at the open. And really, when you just start looking at how the market's been performing, it's so interesting, right? How could the market still be end up up when China just said, we're going to fight it to the end? Stock market futures paired gains as China released a statement saying they will fight to the end against tariffs. President Trump is set to impose a whopping 84% tariff, perhaps starting tomorrow, I believe. Yep. Just absolutely crazy. At the same time, the Chinese yuan fell to its lowest level ever. Yeah. President Trump says he might not reduce tariffs on Israel because they give them billions of dollars a year. Holy smokes, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Zhao says translation of this. Well, this is, if not the Fed, then the PBOC, Public Bank of China, I'm guessing, will give us the Yahtzee ingredients. The Chinese yuan deval is a narrative that Chinese capital flight will flow into Bitcoin. It worked in 2013, 2015, and can work again in 2025. Ignore China at your own peril. Okay, it's actually an interesting predicament. Because Ben Zhao, the CEO of Bybit, said US versus China tariff war. China will try to lower the RMB to counter the tariff. Historically, whenever the RMB drops, which is again Chinese currency, a lot of Chinese capital flows into Bitcoin. This is bullish for Bitcoin and ultimately also for our altcoins. Then it's an interesting take, but I'm guessing, he's Chinese, he must know. And if Arthur then both exchange founders, they probably know a little bit about the situation, at least I'm presuming. So here's again what I said. Everything is getting these community notes right now. European Union proposes 25% tariffs on US goods. Yeah, I've just been compiling all the different pieces. Trump says that other countries are now offering things we would have never even thought of asking for because they all don't want this war to continue on. Very, very interesting situation. But the most important part here still stands. I will buy this crypto dip every single day of the week. Not literally. I mean, I probably won't be, trying to time the dip every single day by trying to buy the bottom of the day or something. I just mean, if I see the crypto price so low like right now, I just buy it. Why? Because I know in the end it will be worth it. Now, in the short term, it may not be. but think about where you want to be at the end, not where you want to be tomorrow, but think about it from a few months, maybe a few year perspective. And I will not guarantee anything. I'm not your financial advisor, but I'm very freaking sure you'll win. And that's the way I've gone about it for the last almost decade here. And it's always worked out beautifully. So again, in the short term, you may hate yourself a lot. But in the long term, I think you will win. Many of these coins will probably still peak somewhere within a few months. Still my own personal prediction. And that's what I'm rooting for, baby. Just a few more seconds of enjoyment. Just want you guys to share the joy with me. Nice little ocean here. Oh, this is nice. I should just jump down again, huh?